Welcome back, Mistakes listeners. This is Dave, and this is Parenting Mistakes. This is episode 68. Todd and I recorded this episode on August 15, 2016, and this week we looked at the cultural phenomenon, Pokemon Go. Question is, for us, is it good for you? Is it good for kids? Well, you'll have to tune in and find out. As always, you can tweet us on Twitter at Parent Mistakes or #Parent Mistakes. You can like us on Facebook at Parenting Mistakes, and you can email us directly at parentingmistakes@hotmail.com. And as always, sit back and enjoy the show.
So, Dave, I have to assume that you teach your children not to talk to strangers.
Yes, it's called Stranger Danger in our house. We've been working on it since since Kaylee could start talking.
Okay. And this has not changed for many, many years, right? I mean, strangers come in all different packages. I remember when we were kids, like in the 70s.
Like with bows and stuff?
Well, no, but like we were told about these people that would pull up in front of your house and offer you candy to get in their car.
You know what? Now that I have kids, that might actually work.
Right.
Because they love candy, right?
Oh, sure.
And anybody would offer them candy. That strat is not changed.
Okay. But you know sort of the strange, it's not strange, but the evolution of parenting is that as kids get older, they need to talk to strangers, and you actually encourage them to work on their people skills.
Yeah. Well, they'll never be able to buy food at QFC or whatever, right?
Right. Or you say, oh, well, you need a straw. Go ask that man right there for a straw.
Right.
And then you can see them do it, and then they come back and they realize they can talk to people. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and you also want them to mature as well. Like, you want them to be able to say, if someone comes to the door and you open the door, because right now my kids have a problem with just opening up the door to whoever shows up.
Sure.
And I want them to have the ability to say, nope, I'm not going to open the door because I don't know that guy, or open the door and basically know how to close it.
Correct.
Right? But I'll tell you, it's a real confusing thing because my kids, they don't say no to candy.
Right.
They just don't.
Right. So let me give you a scenario. This is a real-life scenario, and I want you to sort of picture yourself in this scenario, but from the perspective of your kids. We've talked about this before many times on the podcast. I have older kids. You have younger kids. So we're at the beach last night because I live in sunny Southern California, and my daughter is now 12. She turned 12 this week, and she had a birthday party with a bunch of her friends. So there's 10 12-year-olds.
We're calling her the front seater. Did she actually sit in the front seat now?
She hasn't. Well, I haven't driven with her yet.
Okay.
Well, because we were shuttling kids to the beach, and I was playing chauffeur because there was an empty seat next to me in the minivan, and then all the girls were in the back. Anyway.
Your daughter. Oh wow. Okay, there you go.
Well, you know how it goes. They don't want to sit next to their parent. They want to be in the back with their friends.
It's been a big time for us as we talked about friends.
I know. It's bigger for us than for them, right?
That's right.
Anyway, they're at the beach, they're playing in the water, they're playing some games together, and then they're hanging out. And so they're at one point, they're all laying on their towels on the beach and just kind of chatting and eating snacks. Well, here comes this little girl, this stranger. It's different when it's a kid, right?
Sure.
So this little kid comes up to me, and she, according to my wife's estimate, she was probably about 6. She comes up to me, and she asks if she can play with the girls. And I, as a parent, again, you want to teach your kids to be nice and hospitable and that sort of thing. But I'm also sitting going, okay, this is a little kid. It's my daughter's birthday party. The games that they're going to be playing, she's just not tall enough to play and that sort of thing.
There's lots of considerations there. It's going to be a sacrifice for Meg
right
at that point.
So I sort of hemmed and hawed and just tried to give her an answer that would give her satisfaction but would also make her go away, which isn't very nice, but
yeah, I understand.
So she wasn't buying it, so she was just kind of hanging around a little bit. So okay, whatever, don't want to be totally rude. And then she sees our table, it's got some snacks on it, and she asks if she can have some, and
wow. That's something I've actually never quite seen. I've never had anybody come up to one of my parties and
I mean, we do teach kids to be honest, right? Hey, you got some stuff? Can I have some of that?
Right. Well, going back to candy, right?
Yeah, that's right. So she asks my wife, and my wife says, well, it's okay with us, but go ask your parents. And so she runs and asks, and then she comes back, and then she asks for some punch, and then we go through that same round of, checking with the parents and that sort of thing. And then she asks if she can hang out with the girls. And we, again, try not to be too rude. So she goes and gets her towel, and she comes and sits by the girls. And they were nice about it, but this brings us back to us, and let me ask you this question. If you would be comfortable, not just from a safety standpoint, because, again, we allow our kids to do certain things that we can see them.
And my question is, could you see her parents?
I could see her, well, who we assume to be her parents, adults.
Guardians.
Guardians. There were like several adults there, so we see them. And would you allow your daughter to join another party of, again, strangers, hang out with them, eat their food? I mean, there's the safety question, but then there's also sort of the, is it proper? Is it polite? You're just going to walk up to a group of people at the beach and just say, hey, how's it going? Can I sit with you guys? Can I eat with you guys? How do you feel about that as a parent?
So, again, these scenarios that come up for kids. So I've got a 7-year-old who will probably never be that bold, but I actually have seen her interact with kids and other people and other parents. Where I go, of course, I wouldn't do that myself because I've got all my reservations, and I'm 44 and I don't want to mess with anybody, right? In fact, if that kid was 44, I'd be like, get out of here, scram, right? This is my kid's birthday, not your cake, right?
Right.
But with a little kid, so for me, being the parent of the precocious kid, I actually might let it play out to see where it would go. Because if I tell her straight out, hey, you can't hang out with those people, she can't conceptualize it. It's hard for her to get. Like, I don't get it. Like, there's food available. There's kids there. I want to play with those kids. Why are you saying no? Of course, right. I've lived a life, and I have actually been in scenarios in which I've been told to scram. I've been treated rude, all these things. But it's life experience that occurs with that stuff, right? It's very hard to educate kids on a scenario in which, just like this, right? So being the guardian, again, it's very awkward too, and you've been there too, where my kid is interacting with your kid. Does that mean I have to interact with you? Like when looking at the other parent group, right? You're like,
sure.
I don't want to get to know you. You know what I'm saying? But now I'm being sucked into this, right? Now I'm being kind of, well, my kid's interacting, which means I'm getting put into that scenario. So my gut response is, no, I don't want her to deal with that or do that because I'm going to get sucked into it. But my parenting says, you know what? Let's see how this goes. If they say no, we can talk about that. If they say yes, we can talk about that. If it looks like the other girls are annoyed, right? We can talk about that.
Right.
So, I guess I'd see how far it would go. I'd also try on my level to see out what the annoyance level is of everybody, right?
Right.
At what point is my kid ruining that other kid's birthday? If she isn't, then yeah, let her eat cake.
Well, and I wasn't, again, it was fine. It wasn't a big deal. I mean, we were just kind of hanging out and that sort of thing. I mean, I could tell, my daughter was being very gracious about it. She was being nice. But after a little while, she was sort of like, okay, this girl's following us all over the place and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I did steal a few glances over at the adults, and they didn't seem to be, like, paying attention.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because usually there's kind of there's a eye play that occurs with the other people that are getting pushed into that scenario.
And maybe I just sort of missed when they were looking over here, or maybe they just sort of, maybe they took a look at us and said, they look like safe people.
Sure.
I don't know. That's hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, you make those sorts of judgments. So there you go. It's a friendly place, Southern California at the beach.
That's what I've heard.
Speaking of friendly places.
Mm-hmm.
Do a little awkward transition.
We are pros at it, that's for sure. Okay.
All right, so we're going to talk about the hottest game in the world right now,
Ever,
which is,
to be honest with you.
well, really,
Yeah.
is it really, or is it just hyped up?
No, no, no. I've actually watched quite a few. I'm a gamer,
Right?
right? And I have never ever seen this level of interactivity for a game ever, right? So much press and so much. How about this? A spotlight into my culture, which I've never had.
Okay, so we're talking about Pokemon Go, which is a handheld game, which I have not played. Have you played?
Of course.
Of course you have.
Well,
I have not,
I'll give you a little of my history too. I'll give you a little of my history if you want
well,
of how I got into it.
do we have time in our unlimited podcast?
I thought about this, and it might be interesting to tell you what I thought when I actually saw this game.
Okay.
So, do you want to get into that, or Pokemon Go? Basically, what it is, it's a combination of geocaching with augmented reality,
Okay.
and it's fantasy fulfillment on a level we've never experienced.
Okay. So you're looking at your phone's screen, which is using your camera as if you're taking video,
Mhm.
because you're looking at the real world in front of you. But the software has an algorithm which inserts animated characters, and depending on where you are, those things will pop up and you're supposed to capture them. Yes?
Yes, it's augmented reality.
Okay. And there have been a number of issues with it only because these characters are inserted randomly, but they're also concentrated in, say, public places.
Yeah, and let me tell you how big of a scale this is, Todd. So, just try to tell you, the last time anything this big hit the American populace is probably World of Warcraft.
Okay.
You'd have everybody like, oh, I can get into this thing. I can play with other people online. My grandma plays it. It got crazy.
Okay.
There's millions of people who are playing that game. But there were still pockets of people that had no idea what an MMO was. They had no idea what this was. Because it required an internet connection, it required time, it required a computer. But this game, I mean, there isn't a soul on Earth that isn't watching, in America, for that matter. I'm not going to talk about China or whatever, but let's say in America, that isn't watching the zombies walking around with their phones, with a little Pokemon map. I mean, I could go out right now and find 3 people on our street doing it.
Okay.
Right? And it's like that everywhere. Like if you were to go out front door to your house, you'd probably find somebody looking for Pokemon out there.
Funny you should mention that. I've got a good story for you.
Yeah, go ahead. Like I'm saying, there's nothing like this game ever.
All right, so we're driving down our street. Well, we're driving a little ways from our house, about half a mile from our house. There's a park. Okay? We're driving by that park yesterday. There is a house on the corner which has police tape around it. There are 2 police cars in front of said house.
Right.
And there are 2 news vans down the street from that house. And so, of course, we're like, oh, well, I wonder what's going on.
Sure.
There's not like, there isn't a bunch of cops with drawn guns. There's not mayhem. But there's something happened there. So a little later on, we look up online. Turns out there are a couple of guys who were playing Pokemon Go in the local park. And this was like 2:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah. Because you can get certain Pokemon at night.
Right. So they're playing this game, and I guess a couple of hoodlums drove by in a car and demanded their stuff. And these guys fought back, and they, got out some knives, and then guys in the car tried to run them down, and that sort of thing. So this all happened at a park near my house. It's really nice to have your neighborhood in the news for these sorts of things.
Yeah, obviously. That's
Okay.
nice, I guess.
All right. So, and by the way, this was a topic in the van with my daughter and her friends as they were driving to the beach.
Sure.
Not the crime, but just the game itself. And, kids are interesting because there have been some incidents. There have been some people driven off the road. They've fallen into ditches and broken their feet. I mean, and then of course this magnifies into urban legends. Oh, I heard this guy died. Oh, I hear this guy walked off a cliff. That sort of thing.
Two dead bodies have been discovered because of Pokemon Go.
Right.
That's a fact.
You could make the argument that anybody could have found them just going for a walk. Anyway.
That's true.
Let's bring this back to parenting. Would you, as a parent, knowing that this is a game that there's a couple angles here, and we talked a little about safety. The safety concern is that because people are going to public places, it's one thing if you're going to a mall, right, where there's a whole bunch of people, but it's quite another if you're going to a park late at night. People that would-be thieves know this, and they're waiting. They go to a park, and they wait for somebody to go to a park by themselves, walking around with a phone, not paying attention, and nab them. Okay? So there's the safety concern. And then there's also just it's popular right now, it's hot right now, it's hyped right now, everybody's doing it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So as a parent, if you had, say, a teen with a smartphone, would you allow them to play this game? And if so, with what kind of guidelines?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what my experience has been so far.
Okay.
So I saw Pokemon Go 2 years ago at E3. Like, I was watching it, and I immediately went, I want to play that game. I want to play that game with my kids.
Okay.
The reason I did was that I knew what they were entailing, and I knew quite a bit about augmented reality already. It actually had a couple of game experiences where I actually experienced augmented reality, and quite frankly, if they can figure out this augmented reality, all this VR stuff is going to go away. VR will be a thing of the past if they can figure out AR in a way that everybody can kind of figure out.
Sure.
It's kind of hard to explain, but with AR, you actually are changing your environment. Microsoft's putting a lot of money into this.
Like
Google Glass.
HoloLens and stuff like that.
And Google Glass is a prime example of this, and I'm sure the Google Glass guys are going crazy right now. Like,
right.
Hey, you can wear glasses and look for a Pokemon with glasses on without having a handheld? Great, right?
Right.
All this stuff is coming, but this is the first successful launch of it, right? So when I saw it, I knew it. And I downloaded it on day one. I actually tried to get in on the beta, too. I tried to get in early. And within 2 days, so I downloaded it, Kaylee and I, so my eldest and I, started actually searching out Pokemon. You can't get around that. You have to walk around. You have to get out of your house. You can't drive around either.
Right.
Basically, you get these things, you get eggs within the game, and the only way that these eggs will hatch is for you to walk. Because it has a walking meter within the phone, right, that's detecting how many steps you're taking. Without it, you can't hatch eggs.
Right.
And obviously all the Pokestops and the Pokegyms and all this stuff. And then just the mind-boggling part of it, the element that brings it all together, is the fact when you find a Pokemon and he's there in the real world where looking through your phone is probably one of the most exciting gaming things you can do right now. It's never been done.
Okay.
So here has been my incredible positive experience with it. Kayleen and I went to a park to go search out Pokemon. Kayleen has always complained about long walks. She went 3 miles with her father and didn't know it.
Okay.
She walked 3 miles and didn't know it. And at the end of it, she was exhausted. She went to bed early. She didn't know what had happened. All she knew is that she had a great gaming experience out in the park looking for Pokemon with her father. And it was
that was my oldest daughter's comment too. That she said, "Hey, well, at least the gamers are getting outside and walking around."
It's really weird to see a bunch of my people out there, right? They haven't seen the sun in about 15 years, which is really nice, right? And I've actually had a number of positive experiences with other people at Pokestops.
Okay.
Right? Like when a Pokemon appears, everybody sees the same Pokemon. So if there are 5 phones there and a Pokemon appears, we're all going to see the same Pokemon. So I can basically tell somebody that's near me, by the way, there is a such and such. There's a Pikachu right here if you want it. Come over
Okay.
here and come to me, right? So it's
Okay.
incredibly social as well. And there's always a smile. Now, I know there have been negative experiences, but for the normal dude just walking down the street having a good time with it, it's a ton of fun. On the negative side, it's not a very good game. It needed about another year of development. It's got horrible server issues. It's got the worst interface I think I've ever seen in a game in a long time. Like, I can't believe they got away with the stuff they've gotten away with. There's not a whole lot of thinking about where the Pokestop should be and how the gym executes. The game literally almost plays by itself. There's not a whole lot of challenge to the game.
Okay.
So as far as the hardcore gaming group is concerned, this is going to go away real quick.
Okay.
But it's captured the imagination of everybody, right? And whoever picks up the ball in this next iteration of whatever that might be is really going to make a lot of money, right?
Okay. So again, just take your gamer hat off if you can.
Sure. Now
And
I
just
can.
put
I had to get it out.
Yeah, I understand. Put your parenting hat on and say, okay, because again, what you're describing, we don't want to use the word tricking, but I mean, you're inspiring your child to walk that doesn't necessarily like to walk, and a 3-mile walk with dad is fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a great outcome.
Without a single complaint.
Right. If you
Right?
just said to me, hey, we went for a 3-mile walk today and it was very nice, I would say, fantastic, good parenting moment right there.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And again, we understand you're not going to allow your child, particularly at their age, to go do some of the things that some of the, we don't want to be mean, but the idiots are doing.
Right.
I mean, I said to my wife last night, I mean, I feel bad for anyone that is a victim of a crime, but I also want to say to these guys, okay, you're wandering around in a park at 2:30 in the morning, and it surprises you that maybe something bad might happen.
Right.
I mean, I live in this is Southern California. There's crime around here. It's not horrible. I feel perfectly fine living where I am and that sort of thing. But at the same time, I don't just go wandering around at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And, neither do I. Not most people don't. Right.
So let me ask you though, from the other standpoint, not just, I mean, we know the obvious of the safety thing, because you're not going to just give Kayleen your phone and say, here, go wander off into the woods and go search, and dad will be here when you get back. Right? We know that.
That's not going to happen. You are very correct.
Right. Do you worry at all, because this is something I think about, do you worry at all about your kid? There's always a balance between allowing them to be part of sort of the latest hype machine and also just sort of becoming that person. Because again, there's that balance of kids, right? Do you let them follow things just because they're popular? Or do you say, you know what, I can discern this a little bit. I know that this is really hot right now and it's going to be hot for a little while longer and then it's going to kind of dissipate. Or you can also look at it and just say, this just isn't that great. It's overhyped.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to jump on this just because your friends are talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you strike that balance as a parent?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. If the game had a cost to it, like it's going to cost us $20 to download this game, I would say no.
Okay.
because I understand what's occurred here, but it's free, right?
Okay.
And you actually get quite a bit of game for free.
Okay.
So, again, I don't have a 13-year-old that has a phone. Like, we've had our phone conversation. So,
Right.
So let me try to step into that. So do I let my 14-year-old play Pokemon Go? Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay.
As long as it's within reason, right? And of course, being parents the way you and I are, I mean, beyond 8 o'clock at this point, no one's going out,
Right.
right?
Is this a separate conversation? I mean, because there are things that come up. There's general rules you give your kid. There's general things where you say, okay, tell me where you're going to be going. Tell me what you're doing. You have to be home by this time. that sort of stuff. Is this a specific, this is different parenting moment where you have to sit down and say, hey, look, people specifically are being targeted?
No, this is a specific parenting moment. I would put it right up there with texting, right?
Okay.
Because I think kids can actually compartmentalize this pretty easily. I'm playing Pokemon Go. I'm not texting. Because you could kind of lump this all into the cell phone conversation.
You could.
But it's totally separate, in my opinion. Like,
right.
There is nothing really to compare to what this is right now and everything else. So I think it does require a separate conversation.
Right. Well, and it's always, you don't know what role, because like right now, if these guys in this park had not been attacked while they were playing this game, they would not have sent the news vans out.
Oh, sure.
And they would not have made this a story. They would not have been, hey, a couple of guys got jumped by some thugs in a park. That happens probably every day, every night somewhere.
Oh, sure. Right.
There is certainly a clickbait, angle to this right now, because everyone knows if you can get anything Pokemon Go into a story, you're going to get clicks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay. Well,
so I don't think again, it's tough. This is one review that is really kind of tough for us because you haven't played it.
I have not.
So
I don't see myself doing it. I just don't.
I just say this: there's no monetary cost, and you can just experience it.
No, I'm not worried about the monetary cost. It's more
your time.
It's time,
right? Or you're just not interested.
I don't know. I mean, it's more of a, as a parent, as an adult, I have limited leisure time.
Mm-hmm.
And
I get this one. Yep.
I mean,
I got better things to do with my time.
I got better things to do with my time.
Yep.
I mean, I do walk. I do go for walks. I'm in the last few years, especially, I walk more than I ever did before, but usually I'm going somewhere.
Yeah. So let me spin this a little more positive. I'm not trying to convince you to play the game, but there are
right.
a couple of things that happen with Kayleen, who is not an outdoors kid. Neither of my kids are very into the outdoors. But the Pokestops actually take you to historical sites. Okay, so Pokestops are actually related to something that, like, there's a plaque that talks about something historical that happened, or there's a dragon, or there's a statue, or something, right?
Right.
And what ended up happening for Kayleen was she just started looking around, going, there's more things to this park than I knew, right?
Sure.
Again, nature itself is just going to bring all this stuff up without the augmented reality. But I will say this. I mean, you're a teacher. This stuff is coming for you.
Oh, no. I mean, I get it.
You're going to have...
I get the interface.
Very interesting things happening in classrooms next 10 years, for sure.
I'm excited about the augmented reality. I think that's going to be amazing, amazing stuff. I mean...
Well, and that's why this game is what it is, Todd. That's why it's amazing.
We have talked about this in class, though, because you know what the kids are going to do. If they've got a Microsoft HoloLens on their head,
sure,
while they're looking at me, they're going to hit a button, and all of a sudden I'm going to be Gumby.
Or Christy Brinkley.
Yeah, and I'm going to be talking.
That's right. You had to say Gumby.
Yeah, I had to say Gumby. Well, you said Christy Brinkley. They don't know what that is.
Well, you're the internets.
Yeah, I know. I'd be like, who is that?
Well, look it up.
I said Doogie Howser to my oldest daughter today, and she's like, who's Doogie Howser? I said, never mind. I had to explain it.
So here's the deal with reviewing this game at this point. It's only been a week. I have no idea how it's going to play out. I will say that the general gaming culture, again, it's not a very good game. It's kind of went, it'll flash away.
Yeah. But it's going to be cloned immediately. It's going to be like Flappy Birds. Okay. There's going to be. But
here's the scary thing, and this is the thing that this is where I got creeped out a little bit. Is McDonald's has made a huge push to be a part of this game, right?
Okay.
So I don't know. Now that I don't care for, because Kayleen can't go to McDonald's. But here's this app that says you can get the best Pokemon at McDonald's, right? And I'm like, that leaves a bad taste in my mouth immediately as a parent.
Well, and it also too, I mean, it's hard to be a parent sometimes when you see other parents doing certain things. And again, some of this is unsupervised, but I read a story about this, and we have a Holocaust museum out here in Los Angeles.
Sure.
And it's an amazing museum, but it's a very quiet museum. Like, you go there, it's a museum of kind of reverence. I mean, it's not a high energy museum. It's very sobering.
Well, that makes sense.
Is the word I'm looking for.
It should be.
Yes. Well, there was a story about the museum asking people, "Hey, could you maybe not play Pokemon Go in the Holocaust museum?"
Sure.
And again, you want to just go, okay, where again, it could be adults. That's the thing. It could be, because I know there's a lot of adults playing
Oh,
this.
yeah. Totally.
And you just want to kind of go, people, really?
Well, it's a weird thing. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because you've got people that are like, but I've never been to the Holocaust Museum. What is this?
Right.
And now they're there. I mean...
Yeah. Except that, again, we always have to step back. And again, I get your example of, well, it can get them to go to places and that sort of thing. As a parent, over the years, we've just sort of said, hey, we're going to this museum. And sometimes the kids have a good attitude about it and they enjoy it, and other times they don't. And that's just kind of what parenting is.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there are times you walk a fine line as a parent between trying to get child buy-in and just basically saying, hey, we're going to this thing, whether you like it or not. And we'd love it if you had a good attitude. And you can't, because you can't always have it both ways.
Yeah,
ideally, you'd love your kids to be enthused about every outing you plan, and it just doesn't happen.
And here's a new catch-22, and that is, or catch-22. It's not a catch-22, but it's a new element. If you go to the museum, I'll let you play Pokemon Go. Okay, I'm there, right? And I'm like, ooh, that's probably not so good either.
Right, because then they might completely ignore the museum even though they're there.
Yeah, and suddenly they're in the tar pits, right? Oh, right. Pokemon Go player found 5,000 years later. How did all these people end up in the tar pits? Pokemon Go.
All right. Well, you can follow us on Twitter, Parent Mistakes. We have a Facebook page, Parenting Mistakes. You can leave feedback on both of those. You can shoot us an email, good old-fashioned email, parentingmistakes@hotmail.com. We are on Podomatic, iTunes, and YouTube. And if you want to support us financially, you can go on Patreon and look for Parenting Mistakes. And unfortunately, at none of those places can we offer you any Pokemon Go rewards. But hey, maybe in the future.
Maybe.